My name is Wafia Merritt. I'm 31 years old. Last Thanksgiving, my mother raised her glass in front of 14 people, family, neighbors, friends from church, and said one daughter is a surgeon. The other one, well, she cleans houses for a living. Everyone laughed. My sister smiled. My father looked at his plate. I didn't say a word. I just kept refilling water glasses because that's what they expected me to do. What they didn't know was that 3 weeks later, they'd be sitting in a ballroom with 600 people watching me walk across a stage to accept an award they couldn't even pronounce. And the company I had built, the one they knew nothing about, had been serving their favorite resort for 2 years. They just never thought to ask whose name was on the contract. This is that story. To understand what happened at that Thanksgiving table, you need to understand my family. We grew up in Clearwater Heights, a quiet suburb outside Phoenix where the lawns were always trimmed and every garage held 2 cars. My mother, Diane, was a retired elementary school teacher who believed in 3 things: God, appearances, and her eldest daughter. My father, Raymond, was a quiet accountant whose favorite phrase was, "Your mother just wants what's best for you, Sophia." That was his answer to everything. Every comparison, every slight, every time I was made to feel like I didn't belong at my own dinner table. And then there was Claire. Claire Merritt Harlow, board-certified dermatologist, partner at a prestigious Scottsdale practice. Her husband, Thomas, was a real estate attorney with his own firm. They lived in a 5,000-square-foot house in North Scottsdale with a heated pool and a 3-car garage. My mother posted about Claire on Facebook an average of 4 times a week. Her bio simply read, "Proud mother of Dr. Claire Merritt Harlow." That was it. Just Claire, as if she only had one daughter. I used to scroll through my mother's profile late at night looking for myself. In 3 years, I found one photo. I was in the background, slightly out of focus, carrying a casserole dish. She hadn't even tagged me. Growing up, I was always Claire's little sister. Never just Sophia. Teachers would light up when they saw my last name on their roster. Then their faces would fall slightly when they realized I wasn't going to be wonderful in quite the same way. I was a good student, honor roll, but not valedictorian. I played softball for 2 years before quitting. I was fine, average, forgettable. And in a family that worshipped excellence, forgettable was the same as failure. For 5 years, I worked at Claire's dermatology practice. It started as a favor. At least, that's how she framed it. I was 22, freshly certified as a medical assistant, desperate to prove myself. Claire called one afternoon and said there was an opening at the front desk. I should have heard the warning in her voice. But I was young and I was hopeful. I thought maybe this was her way of finally seeing me. "I'm doing this as a favor," she said before I started. "Don't make me regret it." I didn't. For 5 years, I arrived early, stayed late, learned every patient's name, remembered their children's birthdays. I never called in sick. I never complained. And then one Monday morning, I was called into the practice manager's office and told I was being let go, effective immediately. 20 minutes to collect my belongings. 5 years. Perfect attendance. Not one complaint in my file. 2 weeks later, a colleague called and told me the truth. It was Claire. She had gone to the manager and said I was a liability, that I made patients uncomfortable, that I had attitude problems. None of it was true, and everyone knew it. But no one was going to argue with a partner physician. I sat in my car in a parking lot for 2 hours after that call. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt something harden inside me with every passing second. I had $3,200 in debt, no job, and no explanation I could give my parents that wouldn't sound like I was attacking their golden child. So I found something, just not in the way anyone expected. I started cleaning houses, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to pay rent. A friend of a friend connected me with a widow in Paradise Valley named Mrs. Ellison, 73 years old, living alone in a 6,000-square-foot home. She paid $150 per session. For the first few months, it was mindless work. But then I started noticing things. Unpaid bills stacked on the counter, a broken garage door she'd been meaning to fix for months. One day, without being asked, I organized her bills, called the handyman, cleaned out her refrigerator, and made a grocery list. She cried. "No one has ever done this for me," she said. That was when I realized something. Wealthy people don't just want clean. They want invisible. They want someone who sees everything, says nothing, and makes their lives easier without ever making them feel dependent. On September 12, 2022, I filed the paperwork for Elevate Concierge LLC. The filing fee was $50. The first year was brutal. I worked 18-hour days. I hired 2 employees and took every client we could get: estate management, home organization, personal shopping, errand running. By the end of 2022, we had 12 clients and barely enough revenue to cover payroll. I almost quit 3 times. Then in April 2023, everything changed. A woman named Margaret Ashby reached out to me by email. She was 62, a widow, and the owner of a 120-room luxury resort in Paradise Valley. Her previous housekeeping contractor had been caught in a scandal, and she needed a new vendor. Someone discreet. Someone trustworthy. One of my clients had mentioned my name. I met her on a Tuesday afternoon in an office behind a mahogany desk that probably cost more than my car. "Everyone promises discretion," she said. "What makes you different?" I thought about Claire, about my mother, about all the years I'd spent being invisible in my own family. "I've spent my whole life being invisible, Mrs. Ashby," I said. "I know how to make other people feel seen while staying unseen myself." She slid a contract across the desk. $28,000 a month. "Can you handle it?" I said yes. I had no idea if I could, but I figured it out. I hired 8 more employees. I built training protocols and quality control systems from business books I checked out of the library. It worked. Margaret signed a second contract. Then she introduced me to the owners of 2 other luxury resorts. By November 2025, Elevate Concierge had 38 employees and was on track to generate nearly $2 million in revenue for the year. I drove a 2019 Honda Civic. I wore jeans and plain sweaters, and when my mother asked what I did for work, I said, "Just cleaning, Mom, same as always." She never asked follow-up questions. None of them did. I built something remarkable, and I built it in silence. Then came Thanksgiving. I drove to my parents' house in jeans and boots, carrying a bottle of wine I knew my mother would never open. I parked at the end of the driveway, where I always parked, because the good spots were reserved for Claire's Lexus and Thomas's BMW. For 2 hours I was a ghost, refilling pitchers, clearing plates, disappearing into usefulness. Then at dinner, my mother stood up, glass raised, and delivered her speech. She praised my father, the grandchildren Thomas. She called Claire a doctor, a mother, a blessing, and then she turned to me. Her eyes found mine. And, of course, for Sophia. A pause. Heavy. "I have 2 daughters. One is a surgeon. The other one," she laughed, "she cleans houses for a living, but at least she's good at it." 14 people laughed. I counted every single one. I set down my water glass. I placed my napkin on the table and I stood up. The laughter died. I met my mother's eyes and said, "Mom, I want to thank you for making it very clear in front of everyone here exactly where I stand in this family. I hope one day you remember this moment because I know I will." I pushed in my chair, picked up my purse, and walked out the front door. I didn't slam it. I didn't need to. Sitting in a CVS parking lot 3 miles away, I received a call from my Aunt Carol, my father's sister, telling me to check my spam folder for an email with the subject line, "What to do about Sophia." There were 47 messages, 18 months of my mother, my sister, and my aunt discussing me like I was a problem to be managed. One line from my mother stopped my breathing entirely. "Sometimes I wish I only had one daughter," my own mother, in writing. I created a folder and named it Evidence. I forwarded all 47 emails into it, and then I drove home. The next morning, I received an email from Margaret Ashby. I had been selected as the recipient of the Arizona Rising Entrepreneur Award, presented by the Southwest Business Council. The ceremony was December 18th at the JW Marriott Phoenix Desert Ridge. 600 guests, local press coverage, 10 complimentary tickets. I called my Aunt Marlene, my father's younger sister, the one who would always see me, and we talked for over 2 hours. I told her my plan. I was going to invite my family, all of them. They wouldn't know who was receiving the award. Thomas had already received an invitation through a business contact. They'd think it was just a networking event. Marlene said she'd be there, front row, with bells on. I wrote 7 drafts of my speech. The first was angry. The second was sad. By the 7th, I had deleted all of it and started over, because I realized the best revenge isn't humiliation. It's becoming someone they can't ignore. December 18th arrived. I wore a navy dress, simple and elegant. Aunt Marlene did my hair. At the gala, I watched through a gap in the curtain as my family sat at table 14 laughing, drinking champagne, completely unaware. When the MC announced the award and said my name, I heard my mother gasp before I even stepped into the light. I walked to that podium, adjusted the microphone, and looked out at 600 people. I didn't look at table 14. Not yet. I told them about being fired, about starting with nothing, about cleaning houses and discovering that invisible didn't have to mean worthless. And then I looked directly at my family and said, there were people who were supposed to love me, who told me I would never amount to anything, people who called me an embarrassment. To those people, I want to say thank you. You gave me the greatest gift anyone could give. You gave me a reason to prove you wrong. The room rose to its feet. 600 people, 47 seconds of applause, and at table 14, my family sat frozen and silent. That silence said everything. This story isn't about revenge. It's about freedom. For 31 years, I waited for my family to see me. After that night, I stopped waiting. I let them come to me. And for the first time in my life, I understood something that no award, no contract, no standing ovation could have taught me on its own. I didn't need their permission to exist. I didn't need their approval to succeed. And I didn't need their recognition to know that I had always been worthy of it. If you're the other one in your family, the one they overlook, the one they underestimate, I want you to hear this. You don't have to prove anything to them. You just have to build. Grow quietly. And when you're ready, step into the light. They'll see you then. But by that point, it won't matter. Because you'll already see yourself.